Imagine a world where drones do all the work. Are you thinking about it? What's it look like? Robot butlers? Toilets that wipe your hiney? Wait, I have one of those. I have a Japanese toilet seat. Have I ever told you this story? Hello, fine listeners of the pod listeners. How are you? It's Todd. How's everything going? This is the Pre-Accident Investigation Podcast, and I'm the host of this event. And I was just talking about my fabulous Japanese toilet seat. So I don't know how much you're supposed to talk about toilet seats publicly, but this is friends. We're just friends. It's just the two of us, so we can talk about it. So I often have to go to Japan. And for a while, I went a bunch of times. I was on a little project you probably know. And I thought, man, they've really got the toilet seat thing figured out. I mean, it shoots water, it shoots air, it makes noise, it's heated, they vibrate. It's amazing, right? I mean, it's just amazing. And I thought, I really want one of these. And so I made a little pack that I was going to get one and bring it home. You can get them in the United States. Back then you probably couldn't, but now you can. The company that's really famous for them is Toto. T-O-T-O, Toto, the Toto Toilet Company. So, but back then I thought, well, I'm going to get one of these Japanese toilet seats. So I asked my host if we could go to a Japanese Home Depot, to a lumberyard. And little did I know that would be culturally the highlight of that was an incredible experience because I guess tourists don't really go to Japanese lumberyards because I seem to be kind of the only gaijin in the room. And quite impressed I was by how impressed other people were coming up and looking at me. And so we went down to the toilet seat aisle, and man, oh manazilla, they had like 900, there's a whole row of, like an aisle of toilet seats. And they had fancy ones with remotes that were wireless, and I'd lose that, or I'd be trying to switch the channels in my toilet seat, be shooting water is what would happen. They had ones where the remote's mounted on the wall next to the toilet, and then they had kind of the classic kind that you see in all the hotels, which that has a little remote beside it. So I bought one, and if I remember correctly, it wasn't even. I mean, it was expensive for a toilet seat, but it wasn't that expensive. And I came home and I had my helper, my friend Andreas. He helped me install it. Not that I can't install a toilet seat, but I had to drop electricity in because I needed electricity. So I got electricity, and the plumbing actually it uses the existing water in the toilet, and we installed it, and it was amazing. There was only one part of the story that I'm missing, and that is when you buy the toilet seat in Japan. The instructions are in Japanese. They weren't in English. They were in Japanese. So the installation took quite a long time. And not only did I have to use Andreas to drop the circuit in the bathroom behind the toilet, where we don't normally put them in the United States, but also to figure out all the crap that I couldn't figure out because there were a lot of parts and I didn't know what they did. But eventually, my friends, we made it to victory. Because you know what we were? We were workers working in a highly complex system with goal conflict, or in this case, language conflict, and we were trying hard as we could to be successful, and we made it. So we had all the right complexities managed, and we had all the right capacities in place. And the end of the story is, when you come to my house, certainly, if you do nothing else, ask to go to the toilet. You'll be there a while, but it's kind of a good ride. I would say it's e-ticket quality in Disneyland. That's an old reference. That's a really old reference. This is the podcast for today. How are you doing? Everybody good? So I'm kind of excited about this podcast. So this podcast happened because I was in Wichita, Kansas for quite an adventure. So, I went to Bluegrass, and Bluegrass was great. Rented a golf cart. We had an amazing time. The golf cart makes it so much fun, although I feel like I'm lazy, but it's kind of fun to zoom around the campgrounds and listen to people play. I heard great music. I heard two people that you guys ought to look up. One is a guy named Billy Strings, not his real name. That is his stage name. He is amazing. He did the last set on the main stage in Winfield on Saturday night. He did about 55 minutes, which is that's 10 minutes longer than it was supposed to be, but that's great. he started playing and never stopped. Didn't really even talk to the audience, but not in a bad way, kind of in a good way. But he started out with what I would say is a nod to Carlos Santana, this really fat acoustic guitar played through kind of a Santana effect. He then rolled almost immediately into what I would also tell you was one of the better Grateful Dead covers I've ever heard in my life. And he played around, they kind of jam band around on that with his band. Then he moved into really kind of traditional bluegrass with a big dish of Allman Brothers at the end of it, which was a huge crowd pleaser. And then he ended up with Newgrass Revival. And so imagine this kid, he's like 25 years old. He's an incredible guitar player, just going for it for 55 minutes in kind of the jam band sort of Fish, Leftover Salmon, Grateful Dead way, but going through all these different genres of music. It was completely worth it. I mean, it was an incredible experience. But the weekend was really nutty because I also had to record some video to show to a large organization's board of directors. And the large organization I was working with is Maersk in Denmark. And I couldn't get to Denmark because, there was a bunch of stuff. I was booked. I mean, I was booked. So they sent a video crew over from Denmark, and we shot video in Wichita, Kansas, which I kind of thought would be disappointing to them. But in fact, the video crew was really excited about it because when they were finished with me, they were going to go get a giant tomahawk ribeye steak. And they'd already sort of figured it out and pre-looked at the menu. This is going to be a big deal. That was really exciting. But in the midst of all this, I hooked up with my cousin, Travis Brock, and you'll hear him. He's going to talk in this podcast. And he said, there's a guy, his name's TerryChapas. He really wants to meet you because he does a lot of the same kind of work you do. He's a naval aviator. He's a jet pilot. And he works a lot with high reliability and high risk systems. So we met at a place that Travis sort of arranged called Aero New Word Plains, spelled like Plains, like Aero, having to do with aviation, and Plains having to do with Kansas. And we sat and talked, and it was a really fun little conversation. And I thought I would share it with you, partially because Terry and I go through a little struggle. Not that we're mad at each other. That's not the case at all. But trying to figure out how technology fits into this safety differently component was really an important part of the discussion. Terry looked at it as a value add, which I think is probably a pretty good way to look at it. But I told him I didn't think it was a value add. I thought it was a capacity add. And I think they're very different. A value add saves you money. And by definition, if you use lots of technology, you can use fewer workers, right? I mean, that's sort of the point of that. But I actually think the technology he's talking about really supplements good workers in high-risk opportunities and gives them another vantage point, another way to look at the world, or another way to look at the work, or another way to look at the problem. A better way to understand the blue line. Maybe that's a good way to say that. And that's the discussion we had. So let me not delay too much longer because I can go a long time on this. But this, my friends, I think is worth listening to. This is TerryChapas talking about, in fact, technology and safety differently. Enjoy.
I'm TerryChapas. I live in Wichita, Kansas with my family. Moved here about 6 years ago in 2012. I currently work as a consultant in the oil and gas industry, and I also have a small business doing some UAV work. So it's a startup company.
Which is kind of why I begged you to be on the podcast, plied you with a beer at a nice brewery. What's the name of this brewery, Travis?
Aeroplanes. Wichita.
Aeroplanes. I plied you with the beer, right? And so I'm tricking you into this. Talk to me about this private startup idea and what you want to do with it, because I actually think this is really interesting, especially for the people that listen to this podcast.
Well, my focus right now is to use, first of all, I started off with doing energy conservation projects where I go into facilities and and I find ways to reduce electrical consumption, reduce the kilowatt hour consumption for the companies. All of this is commercial, industrial type work, not residential. And then I started looking at the different sensors that are out there, like infrared sensors, and I got the idea of putting them on drones and flying them externally and seeing the different types of heat signatures emitting from the facility and identifying where the heat losses are. So that's my focus right now, is using the drones and the sensors for energy surveillance, for utilities, for inspections, surveys in the oil and gas industry. So that's my main focus right now, energy.
Are drones capable? I mean, talk to me about drone technology. It's changing a bunch, right? I mean, my experience is pretty, like the neighbor crashed one in my yard, so I got to see one up close when they came to get it. But that's pretty much my entire experience. What's going on there?
So the technology is moving super fast. I'm a former Navy pilot. I retired. I flew F-18s, I flew fighters. Back in the day, I retired in 2005. And technologies that were on the up and up back then, at the almost confidential, classified level, today are proliferating throughout industry, throughout commercial. And so we're seeing that. We're seeing the proliferation of GPS and how to use that in different ways. You can use different technologies like photogrammetry to do some very high resolution graphics of different facilities. So it's moving pretty fast. Also, different types of sensors that can you can, like optical gas imagers, where you can adjust the camera to actually see a visual image of a toxic gas, of a volatile type gas. So those are all new technologies that are moving pretty fast in this space.
Are companies accepting this? I mean, is this technology scary to them? Is it comforting to them? What kind of acceptance are you getting when you go out and actually talk to people?
It's kind of lukewarm.
So why? I mean, the question is why, because it strikes me the applications in safety are obvious. I mean, we could talk about them, but it strikes me that this really is, it's efficient, it's incredibly effective, it's incredibly accurate, it reduces risk, it increases productivity. I mean, there's tons of, I can't even really see a downside from a business case. Why would they be lukewarm?
So that's the challenge right now, establishing the business case. For me to do that, for a company like mine to do that, I need to know what their costs are now, how they do their inspections, and what is that costing them. And once I have those numbers, or if I have, if a company is willing to share that with me, then I can sit down and come up with the concept of operation, how utilizing UAVs and the use sensors, we can save them time, money, increase their efficiencies or productivity. So that's the challenge right now, is establishing the business case. And to do that, you got to know what the existing costs are.
So tell me if I'm wrong. Do not hesitate. I've been wrong many times before. But my guess is the business case is not the most compelling argument for using this new technology. My guess is that the business case is boring and not terribly interesting to the senior leaders of an organization, right? They know they spend a lot of money for inspection, and for the most part, when they inspect something, what they find is almost exactly what they think they're going to find. So they've kind of justified that expense. My guess is that what you're really offering them is not something to save money, but something to increase their capacity. It increases their ability to do more things with more flexibility, with more capability than they've ever had before. Like, I'm thinking about like a refinery. That's a great place to think, because refineries are these giant complex systems that are constantly eroding. I mean, that's what refineries do. What you're really giving them is an entirely new way to actually do work in the refinery. It doesn't replace traditional inspections. It actually creates an entirely new way to, at almost a macro level, at the big level, to actually assess and understand their conditions from an entirely different vantage point. I mean, that's what I would think.
And that is, you can use that with the senior leadership, and they understand, they get that. But when you get into the middle management, to try to push this through, it's disruptive. If you talk about increased productivity, now that means there's less labor hours for their workforce, and get a lot of pushback from them.
So let me pull the string on that a little more. Are they pushing back because they're afraid of the cost, or are they pushing back because they're afraid of the technology?
I think they're afraid of the technology. They don't want to be replaced or lose their employability or their number of hours that they work. And there's a lot of examples for that. So, but a lot of times the senior leadership is looking at their middle management and their workforce for their opinion. And a lot of times, in my opinion, I think this new technology gets sabotaged. I don't know if that's the right word, but it gets crushed because people don't want to see it replace them.
To me, that's a really interesting point you bring up, because I don't see drones replacing inspections. I see drones making inspections more robust, bigger, better, more often. It doesn't replace the person. It actually gives the person another set of tools, another vantage point maybe, to actually look differently at problems. And the secret is, at least I could be wrong on this, but the secret is not in what the drone finds, but in how the drone looks.
Yes, you hit the nail on the head there, Todd. So what we offer to try to get in the door, we offer companies that we can go in there and train their people. We'll come in and train your people how to fly these things and what to look for and how to use them, and do it safely, help them pass the FAA standards so they can do this type of work. And that seems to be the right approach at this time.
Are they hard to fly? And this is such an unfair question because you flew jets, but for a moron, could a moron fly them?
Yes. I think they can be flown fairly easily, especially with the technology today, but you still need to be cautious. You still need to take certain precautions and plan your job accordingly. But they are simple to fly. Yes.
And I would say the next step, the next evolution of this is that they'll fly autonomously. I mean, that's really where things change in the automation of the technologies that we're looking at, is that, you may start with proof of concept with people operating, but really to get the most out of the technology, to be on station when they need to be, to fly at a much, just like we're going to have driverless cars, the level of capability and safety that can go in with a pre-approved routing, GPS-controlled UAV, you reduce the chance of that human operator error. And again, it's about now, how do we handle the data? How do we handle the feedback that we're getting from the UAV? And I don't think we even quite yet understand that level of, where that's going to put us in the future.
Don't you think the definition of inspection is going to have to change? Where once inspections go out to find out where things are going wrong, the UAV, especially an autonomous UAV that you could schedule every, twice a day or 3 times a day, it doesn't go out to find things going wrong. It actually goes out to ensure things are going right. Does that make sense, that difference?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in many of these cases, there are, patterns of technicians checking equipment, walking on site, walking or driving, miles in some cases, where the UAV can do that job much faster, do the same, bring back the same feedback that operator brings, does not put a person in harm's way in many instances. So if there is something wrong, that person doesn't enter a dangerous area. And what it does is it redirects your workforce to go fix problems, go have a much higher, I think, work feeling that they are contributing to what they're doing because they're solving problems, versus I have a clipboard, I go out and look at some things, I check a box, and I come back the next day and do the same thing again.
So let me try to rephrase this, because I think I'm not doing a good job. So instead of going out and finding things that are going wrong, what I think you guys offer is you go out and ensure things are going right. So loss of containment, right, which is a bad, like if, let's go back to the refinery. I don't know why I'm picking refineries, but let's go back to the refinery. Loss of containment's bad, right? Traditionally, inspections would go out to find loss of containment. But in fact, what the drone can do with great regularity is not find loss of containment. It would find it would ensure the presence of containment. Does that make sense? Maybe it's too nuanced, but to me, it's the difference between trying to prevent bad things from happening and trying to ensure good things happen. And those, at least in my mind, seem very different. That preventing bad things from happening, kind of you sort of wait for something to fail and fix it. Ensuring good things are happening, that's when you go out and you actually ask this question: what's happening when nothing bad's happening? And the only way you can answer that question is to go out and look at a system that's actually functioning well. And so you use the drone to ensure that the system's functioning well, not to see that if the system's functioning poorly. I mean, it would see the system functioning poorly, but that the ability to ensure things are working right seems more valuable operationally to me. I mean, you guys jump in and tell me, than actually looking at a system that's going badly.
So what we can do with drones is we can establish a baseline of what something's supposed to look like, and then refresh that periodically, either monthly or quarterly or whatever the industry requirements, or daily, depending on the industry requirements, and you can detect the differences of day to day or month to month. And especially today with machine learning capability, artificial intelligence, these things can be, in my opinion, easily integrated into a nice looking dashboard for people in the office to look and see what the changes are.
But you look at like a utility company, like a distribution, they're running electricity across the Appalachians or someplace really far, right? It strikes me that you'd want to go out and verify the system is good, not go out and try to find where the system is bad. Until the system was bad, then you'd want to look for it. And to me, that verification of normal operations, that component is really missing. It's really hard for operations persons. Like this question, I ask it all the time: what's happening when nothing bad's happening? A lot of times in oil and gas, they'll say, well, we get complacent or we got lucky. Well, that's not the answer. When nothing bad's happening on a drilling rig, a lot of people and a lot of systems are working really hard to ensure nothing fails. To me, what the UAV, what drones and this whole technology, this disruptive technology brings to the table is not a way to discover failure. That's actually pretty easy to discover. It's a way to ensure normal, stable, reliable operations. What do you think? You're giving me the look.
Well, I think it's both. I mean, the words. I need another beer. The words that I use often are: we can help you see what good looks like, and we can help you see what bad looks like. We can teach the system what good looks like and what bad looks like. So I think it's mission dependent on what states you are expecting to see, and then how you want to train the AI. So as we don't, as humans, with our clipboards and kind of a history and experience of being out on a site, we learn certain things through that apprenticeship. But the capacity to collect data and analyze that data and then see patterns, to me, the drones, along with many other kind of autonomous or other technology, allows us to do predictive maintenance and other kind of proactive steps that we just don't have capacity kind of in our human brain today to do. And so as you do every one of those flights and you're collecting information, where does that go? What do we do with that? And then how do we step that into the next level of predictive maintenance that we probably don't even do today in a poor way? We don't even know how to do that. And so I think that's the evolution that comes with that too, of seeing what good looks like. How do we include that in a more proactive maintenance or accident avoiding type technology?
So that's pretty interesting, because really what you're saying is we have the ability to build defenses and safeguards around confirmation bias. So what scares me the most about inspection protocols is I go out to look for what I think I'm going to see, and as soon as I see what I think I'm going to see, then I no longer have to look anymore because what I thought was going to happen was confirmed. So if I see a system working well, then the system's working well. But in fact, really AI, is sort of this autonomous machine learning theory, has the ability to sort of go beyond the normal confirmation bias and make it happen. Plus, it's pretty cool to fly drones around. I mean, how cool is that?
It's very cool. Very cool.
Okay, what's your coolest drone story?
Oh, let's see.
And it better involve nudity at some point.
Okay, so I'm on a beach in Greece.
Well, we're going in the right place now.
So, okay, there's no nudity involved in this one, but, I'm on this pier, and I'm with my son, and we're just playing around with this little portable drone that I have. I can throw in the backpack and travel. And we're flying, and it's pretty windy, so I'm, like, walking along the pier as I'm maneuvering the drone. And these drones today, they have a return to home button. So, I get to the end of the pier, and I hit, hey, let's press return to home. I press return to home, and the drone, instead of like landing where I think home is, it goes to the home that we initiated our walk, which was at the end of the other side of the pier. So it kind of set us off in a little bit of panic until we realized what was happening. And then we started running after the drone to cancel that command and bring it back. But anyway.
So if people want to contact you and learn more about this, you're a really good resource for this, lots of background, and a really pretty solid background in operational safety. How do they get a hold of you?
My email is Terry, T-E-R-Y, at enelect.com. That's E-N-E-L-E-C-T. That's the name of the company, Enelect. So Terry at enelect.com. And the website is enelectuas.com. You can also see what we have on the website. Again, that's enelectuas.com. That's the website. Or call me.
What do you think? What's the future hold? Final words.
All right, coming from Travis here. Well, Terry's all over this UAV stuff, and it's been fun with an oil and gas experience to kind of see how we can collaborate and bring those two things together. After sitting here with Todd and understanding his experience, I think it's going to be the sky's the limit. I think that UAVs today are like a smartphone was in 2006 or 7. When we got them, we thought we'd kind of maybe we could do video calls on top of our phone and texting, and now look at what we do and how we use this tool. I think that we don't even know how we're going to use these things, but I'm really excited about, kind of collaborating and see how that goes in the future.
So what think thee? Did that sound kind of like Shakespearean a little bit? I thought so. It might be. It's interesting to hear these guys who are right on the cutting edge of this technology talk about other uses for it. But what I found interesting, and you tell me if I'm wrong, is that I think the way they were looking at it was kind of old view, traditional view. And what I thought happened in the conversation, you'll have to be the judge because you're the listener, is that I tried to shift them towards more of a new view, that this technology doesn't replace and save money, although it may replace and save money. What this technology does is actually increase capacity, and it increases the amount of data and the ability for you to understand really the systems in which you work. This is a good tool to answer this question. What's happening when nothing bad's happening? And I think that alone is a reason enough to have this podcast. That's where I am on this. You can tell me if you're different. I don't know. I'm fine either way. That is today's podcast. Thanks for listening, you guys. If you're new to the podcast, welcome aboard. Subscribe, rate us. That seems to draw listeners in. But our numbers are pretty amazing. So, a couple thousand of you listen every single day to this podcast, and that surprises and delights me. But what's more surprising and delighting is that I think we're making the world a better place. Get caught doing the right thing. Get caught trying to be good. That's what I say. Until then, my friends, have as much fun as you possibly can. Learn something new every single day, and for goodness sakes, be safe.